since I've had to drop everything and rush over to one of my listings to fix a problem. In my head, I'm like, come on, you've been here for 2 days, but I got the message so that you don't end up having to drop everything to fix a problem. If you're new to me, I'm Matt, and my channel is all about how to go straight to profits and host the best guests on Airbnb without all the fluff. So about a month ago, I'm rushing around trying to get ready to head out of town for a long weekend up to a friend's cottage. And of course, it happened. I got an Airbnb message just as I was about to finish packing the car and hit the road. I wondered to myself, is this a new reservation or is it from a guest that I'm currently hosting? To be honest, guests I'm currently hosting don't normally message me very often. And more often than not, my Airbnb notifications are either inquiries or requests or instant booking notifications, which are all a good thing. See, I have an autoresponder that normally buys me a bit of time for new guests, but I always check the notification to see if I need to deal with it right away. And this time I had to. A guest was reporting a broken toaster in one of my units. At least the place wasn't burning down to the ground. But the reason that this particular issue was so frustrating and why we're going to talk about it today is that it came in at the worst time. While I'm trying to get out of town and I've got people waiting on me. And it's also been ages since I've had to drop everything and rush over to one of my listings to fix a problem. I'd almost forgotten what it was like. So let me tell you a little bit about this guest, whose first name is actually Karen. And if I'm being truly honest, she'd already been a bit of a pain up to now. She wanted an early check-in because she was coming from another Airbnb. Check-out over there was at 11 a.m. My check-in isn't until 3. I'm sure you know that stuff, that same story. But she really laid it on thick for me. She had a lot of stuff. She was a woman traveling solo in a different country, in a big city, yada, yada, yada. All right, fine. I did the early check-in. The place was empty that day anyway, and I knew that I'd be away for part of her stay, so I thought I should buy myself a bit of goodwill in case I needed it. And it turned out I did. So off to the store I go to buy the toaster. At this point, I'm naively hoping that I can be done with all of this in 30 minutes. But at the time, I had no idea that Karen had a whole list of unexpected surprises for me. This listing was sporting the coveted guest favorite badge, and since it's slow season, I needed to keep my ratings up to keep the badge on my listing so that I could stay attractive in a sea of local competition. By the way, guest favorite has the potential to make or break your business. So if you're not familiar with it, check out the video I did on it by clicking on the little I in the upper right-hand corner of the video right now. So I get to my Airbnb, Karen opens the door and welcomes me in. Again, her name is actually Karen. Although at that point, I was really starting to think that she might actually be a Karen. So as I'm removing the old toaster, plugging in the new one, we get to chatting. While we're talking, she casually throws in that she can't get the shower to switch from the shower head to come out the downspout to fill the tub for a bath. And this seemed to be very important to her because she needs her baths to relax. Anyway, I'm thinking this can't possibly be true. She's probably just not familiar with how to switch it. And there is a weird switcher in that bathtub. I've even got a sign that I put on the edge of the tub to remind guests how it works. Plus, the cleaner would have had to get the water to come out of the spout to clean the tub. And if the cleaner just worked around this, there was also a guest staying in that condo for like a month just before this guest. And that guest didn't tell me anything about anything not working. So I go and turn on the water, and sure enough, she's right. It only comes out the shower head. The little button that diverts the water up to the shower head isn't working. Now, at this point, I knew that if I fixed the problem, I was definitely going to be late. I mean, why can't she just fill the tub from the shower head? It's not a great solution, but it would definitely work. My calm had prevailed. She was a guest and she was paying to stay in my place, so I definitely needed to fix it. Luckily, I keep a few tools in the unit, and after a bit of time, I sorted the issue. While I was fixing the issue, she kept talking to me about her trip and what her plans were. I mean, she is a lovely lady. Then, once I'm done, I say, okay, I think I'm done. She thanks me for the rapid response, and then as I start putting on my jacket, and just as I was about to walk out the door, she says, not that it bothers me, but I don't think the area rug was vacuumed. But don't worry, I'll fix it later. I just figured you should know because maybe your cleaner is slacking. In my head, I'm like, come on. You've been here for 2 days, we've been chatting for over an hour, and you couldn't have brought this up earlier? And I looked at the area rug, and sure enough, she was right. It did look kind of dirty. But she'd also been there for a couple of days. Was it her mess, or was it there when she checked in? At this point, I had to make a decision. I needed to decide if I was going to say, yep, thanks for letting me know, and walk right out the door and pick up my friends and head up to the cottage. Or I could challenge her and say something like, are you sure it wasn't vacuumed on arrival? Maybe you've been here for a couple days. But what I was really trying to figure out is if she was trying to take advantage of me. At this point, I was already late enough as it was. I mean, I'd already been responsive enough to earn 5 stars from this guest, but would Karen, my guest, actually agree with that? And how long would it really take me to vacuum a 5x7 area rug? 5 minutes? Yeah, I'll just do it. So I got out the vacuum, and for some reason, the power brush head wasn't working. Now, things were making a little bit more sense. The cleaner probably couldn't get it to work either, and she just vacuumed over the area rug without the brushes spinning. No wonder it looked like it hadn't been vacuumed. But why didn't the cleaner tell me? Anyway, I fiddled with it and I got the brush head to work. I quickly vacuumed and then finally I was out of there. I was done pleasing my Karen, which wasn't actually the case, as I would soon find out. So as I'm driving away, I couldn't stop thinking about what else in this place could be broken. What else wasn't my cleaner telling me about? And what else had I been missing? Look, I hadn't been over to that location for a bit, but the reviews were all still 5 stars. And the listing, as I mentioned a minute ago, was still a guest favorite. Well, at least as long as Karen didn't rate me too poorly, it would still be a guest favorite. So fast forward to the next morning, we're all relaxing at the cottage and I got an Airbnb alert. Checked my phone, it was Karen again. Now the plug for the bathtub isn't working and she couldn't take that bath that she desperately needed. And that was the whole point of me fixing the shower issue. But now I'm 3 hours away. So I quickly start typing up an apology. And as I was writing, and to my surprise, she replied saying that she was gonna go to the hardware store to see if she could fix it because she didn't have much else to do. I'm like, wow, problem solved. Maybe this is the end. And maybe she wasn't a Karen after all, but instead she was pointing out legitimate problems in the listing. But sitting up at the cottage surrounded by people, I was really starting to get worried about what else was wrong over there. And as soon as she left, I decided I needed to get over there and do a full review as soon as possible. And that's just what I did. On Tuesday, when I got back, and after the cleaner had gone in, so that I could get a better idea of the quality of cleaning that I was getting, what did I find? Well, nothing too major, to be honest. Karen had legitimately helped me to identify the biggest issues. The cleaner was doing the job I was expecting, but I did find a secondary TV remote with dead batteries. I found a cookie sheet that was in pretty rough shape, and I found a light fixture that actually has 2 lights in it and one of the lights was burnt out. So I fixed all that stuff. But I got the message, and I got it pretty loud and pretty clear. I'd been neglecting my Airbnb, but why had none of my guests mentioned these items before? Did they really just pop up because I had a fussy guest? And more importantly, if this guest hadn't have told me, how long would these issues have gone on for? And the big problem here was that the issues did pop up. The most frustrating part, though, was that all of these issues were preventable. Maybe not the toaster, but the rest definitely were. Had me or my cleaner done a thorough enough check on the place, this would have never happened and I wouldn't have been derailed from leaving for the cottage. But why do I rarely get complaints from guests about things being broken? Why did it have to come from a guest whose name was coincidentally Karen? In my experience, most guests don't report anything for two main reasons. One, they don't want to get blamed for the issue and or charged for something that they didn't break, so they just don't say anything. Plus, lots of Airbnb guests are concerned about the review that they're going to get, and they fear that if they bug a host too much, the host will review them poorly. The second reason I've seen that guests don't report stuff is that they don't care enough to actually take the time to tell you. And I mean, really, it's not a guest's job to report things when they're broken. It's our job as host to know what needs to be repaired and to repair it. In my situation with my guest Karen, there were a few legitimate issues in the condo, ones I just mentioned, but none were really trip ruining or awful. But this does beg the question, what long-term impacts do these minor deficiencies create for us hosts? Well, in my view, there are two big ones. First, when you don't take care of your places, neither will your guests. I've seen this with my co-host. For years, I'd wondered why my listings always seemed to attract quote unquote better guests. And as a result, they were easier to clean and turn over than were my co-host listings. I mean, I was the one vetting the guests for all the listings, so the guest quality should be the exact same. Eventually, though, I realized that if the quality of the guests was the same, it had to be something to do with the places themselves. And after years of pondering this, I finally figured out that it has something to do with the places themselves. My places all have a high duty of care at every turn, and it shows that I care about my guests and want to do everything I can to make them happy. While my co-hosts, they generally do a good job, but they don't go as far as I do. So when the guest interprets good enough, it's just an Airbnb, they treat it like good enough, it's just an Airbnb, which is what leads to longer, messier cleans between guests, lower ratings, and fewer repeat guests. I mean, how can you expect a guest to choose to come back to you if you didn't show them a strong appreciation for their business and their stay? You treated them transactionally, so they're going to treat you transactionally in return. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and learning something too, then please give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, why not click on the subscribe and don't forget the notification so that you won't miss out on any upcoming videos. So how do we avoid all of this in the first place? How do we catch the minor, less obvious stuff so that a guest doesn't find it and point it out at the worst possible time? The most obvious solution is to do a thorough check between each guest. But the problem here is that that's super time consuming and likely not possible to do on a same-day turn. But you see, the answer lies in anticipating the problems before they occur and not delegating all of this to your cleaner like I'd inadvertently been doing. And I'd been doing that through miscommunication. So if you do want to make it part of your cleaner's job to do this sort of thing, make sure that you're actually scheduling enough time to get it all done and paying them for their time so that they do it. Otherwise, if you're not paying them and there's no time, they're not actually going to do it. Getting all this done might mean blocking a full day between guests periodically, say like once a month, depending on the size of your space. And to make the most of this additional time between guests, I strongly recommend that you use checklists and communicate your exact expectations up front and in detail to your staff. In my case, I wasn't open enough about what sorts of things that I wanted to be notified. The cleaner was aware of the shower problem, but she didn't want to bother me with it. Plus, she didn't have time to fiddle with it anyways. But had she told me, I definitely would have made the time. And I'd also been neglecting my duty as a host to make sure that everything was okay. The cookie sheet I found and threw out was clean, but it just looked kind of crappy. And you can't really expect a cleaner to know when you're going to think that a cookie sheet is a bit stained, or when a set of dishes has too many small chips on it, or when a blanket is worn out and needs replacing, or when this or that needs to be tossed or reorganized, whatever the case may be. It's just hard to communicate some of those expectations. So creating strategies and using standard operating procedures to avoid these problems so that you don't end up having to drop everything to fix a problem at the worst time is a huge part of what I teach inside my programs. This way, my students can learn from my mistakes and build accurate checklists from the get-go and avoid the steep learning curve that comes from missing something, having to drop everything and deal with it at the worst time, and then revise the checklist so that it doesn't happen again. And just like any other host, sometimes I too need a gentle reminder to follow my own advice. And sometimes it just happens to be from a guest whose name is actually Karen. Although, as it turned out in this case, she wasn't really a Karen. She was just a guest who used enough stuff in my place to be able to tell me about the deficiencies. And I'm grateful for that. I really, really am. And speaking of Karen, by now you're probably wondering, what kind of review did she actually leave me? Well, 5 stars, and thank God too, because that means that I get to keep my guest favorite designation. My regular viewers will probably notice that I took a slightly different approach with this video. Rather than making a video that is 100% how-to or listing review, I decided to share a recent experience in my hosting business. If you've got a second, then let me know in the comments below which style you prefer. Do you prefer straight up how-tos, or do you like hearing about what's happening in my business and how I'm fixing it? And if you liked this approach or you learned something, then please give this video a thumbs up. If you're looking for more on how to improve your Airbnb business, check out the other videos on my channel. So until next time, bye for now.